Well, Google just posted a paper saying they can crack Bitcoin's encryption. That's the headline. That's what Twitter is screaming about. That's what every crypto journalist who couldn't pass a high school physics class is currently losing their mind over. You know, past a certain age, a man who has a deep understanding of the Ethereum roadmap can be a bad thing. And here's what I want to do today. I want to walk through this story, line by line, claim by claim, number by number, and show you exactly what Google actually said, what it actually means, and most importantly, what Bitcoin developers were already doing about it before Google printed a single page. Because here's the thing. This is not the first time someone has declared Bitcoin dead. The body count on Bitcoin obituaries is somewhere near like 500. 500 death certificates. All were wrong. But this one's different, right? Right? This one's Google. Not some no-name blogger, not a central banker having a bad hair day on CNBC. It's Google, the most powerful technology company on Earth. Google has a history of being afraid of things that are stronger than them. Sound familiar? So today, we're doing a full autopsy on the quantum FUD. No hype, no panic, no speculation, cold, hard facts. By the end of this episode, you're gonna understand exactly what quantum computing can and cannot do to Bitcoin. Right now, today, you're gonna understand why the people screaming the loudest understand the technology the least. And you're gonna see with your own eyes what the Bitcoin developer community is already shipping right now to make this a non-issue, years before it even becomes one. That's right. We are exposing the quantum lie. Someone had to do it! Send it! Alright, let me tell you what actually happened, because the gap between what Google published and what the internet heard is genuinely one of the most spectacular failures of technical communication I have ever witnessed. Google Quantum AI, their research division, published a white paper, a theoretical paper. In it, they made one specific technical claim. They've reduced the theoretical number of logical qubits needed to break Bitcoin's elliptic curve encryption. Previous estimates had that number in the millions. Google's new estimate, around 1,200 logical qubits. A separate paper published the same week from researchers at Harvard, Caltech, and MIT went further. They claimed Shor's algorithm could be executed with as few as 10,000 reconfigurable atomic qubits, using a neutral atom architecture. To the non-technical person, this sounds like they just solved the problem. Like they found a shortcut, like today's Bitcoin security just went from Fort Knox to a cardboard box. That's how it got reported. But here's what actually happened. They published a zero-knowledge proof. That is a mathematical proof that their theoretical approach could work. They did not run the attack. They did not publish the circuits. They did not build the machine. They did not break anything. They did the math on paper. Very impressive math. Still, just math. Oh, but we know math has power. And this is the part that somehow nobody covered. Google looked at those circuits and said, and I'm quoting directly from the paper, "We consider the underlying quantum circuits too dangerous to publish." That is the first time in the entire history of quantum resource estimation that a research team withheld their circuits on national security grounds. Google notified the US government before publishing. They engaged with federal agencies as part of what they called responsible disclosure. They're treating this like a weapons manual. Now, that is worth taking seriously. Acknowledging that a vulnerability could theoretically be exploited and working towards responsible disclosure is exactly what you want a major technology company to do. It is different, completely different from "your Bitcoin is toast by Friday." Here are the numbers that actually matter, the ones nobody put in their headline. Logical qubits achieved by the world's best quantum computers today, 96. Not 1,200, not 10,000. 96. Coherence time, meaning how long these qubits can maintain their quantum state before the calculation collapses, 1 to 2 seconds. Time the actual attack requires to run, days. Physical qubits needed to build 1,200 error-corrected logical qubits, approximately 500,000, because error correction requires hundreds of physical qubits just to maintain one stable logical qubit. That is a 100,000 times coherence gap. That is a fundamental unsolved physics problem that the smartest people on Earth, with essentially unlimited resources, have not solved. Here's my analogy, and I want you to hold on to it. Imagine you need a perfectly tuned concert grand piano to perform a symphony at Carnegie Hall. What quantum computers have today is a piano with most of the keys broken, held together with electrical tape, sitting in a flooded basement. Yes, technically, it has 88 keys, but that doesn't mean you're going to be playing Carnegie Hall anytime soon. But before I go any further, there is a critical piece of Bitcoin's cryptographic architecture that is completely missing from every single mainstream story about this, and I want to bring in a clip from the Blockspace podcast because they explained it pretty well. Pay close attention to this. Let's see it.
So now we finally get to how Bitcoin uses cryptography, because that's what determines what Bitcoin is vulnerable. When you create a wallet, you generate a private key, a 256-bit random number. From that private key, you derive a public key using the elliptic curve cryptography. It's very easy, as I said, to go from private to public, and it's theoretically impossible to go from public to private. That is the asymmetry that Shor's algorithm breaks. But here's the thing, and this is a common misconception. Your Bitcoin address probably isn't your public key. It's a hash of your public key. Hashes are completely different, and Shor's algorithm can't touch them. It can't reverse engineer them. So if you've only shared your address and never your public key, a quantum attacker can't work backwards because they don't have your public key to reverse engineer your private key. They'd have to break the hash first, which is a totally different problem. For the majority of Bitcoin's history, addresses have been hashes of public keys. The public key only gets exposed when you spend your Bitcoin, but there are exceptions. For example, the early Satoshi era coins from the 2010s. Also, ironically, Taproot addresses, the newest address format, those are exposed when they're in flight, when they're unconfirmed.
That right there, that is the piece they buried. Your Bitcoin address is not your public key. It is a cryptographic hash of your public key. Shor's algorithm, the quantum algorithm every panicking person is citing, cannot touch a hash. The public key only hits the blockchain when you spend from an address. If you've received Bitcoin to an address, never sent from it, your public key has never been exposed. A quantum attacker has nothing to work backwards from. It's a completely different mathematical problem. Now there is a real vulnerability window. Let's be precise about it. The wallets genuinely at risk in the future theoretical world where quantum computers exist at scale are specifically Category 1, old pay-to-public key addresses, P2PK format, from Bitcoin's earliest days. These include a significant portion of what are believed to be Satoshi's coins. In this format, the public key is permanently on-chain. Project Ledn, a dedicated quantum security research firm, used what they call the Bitcoin risk list to calculate that approximately 1.7 million Bitcoin sits in P2PK scripts with permanently exposed public keys. Google actually cited Project Ledn's research in their white paper directly. Category 2, any address you've already spent from, meaning you've broadcast a signed transaction and your public key appeared in that signature. That is why address reuse is bad hygiene. One address, one use. We'll come back to what you should do about this. But Category 3, Taproot transactions that are sitting in the mempool unconfirmed, in flight, where the public key is exposed briefly. That is the basis for the, quote, mempool attack narrative. In total, Project Ledn estimates approximately 6.7 million Bitcoin could be potentially vulnerable to an at-rest quantum attack, about 32% of circulating supply. That is significant, and that is worth taking seriously and planning for. Is every Bitcoin in the world going to evaporate next Tuesday because Google published a paper while sitting on 96 logical qubits? No. Now, I want to directly address the mempool attack claim because it is the one that ended up going the most viral, and it deserves a surgical dissection. The claim was a quantum computer could crack a private key in 9 minutes. Bitcoin's block time is 10 minutes. Therefore, the mempool attacks are real. Therefore, you can intercept someone's transaction, steal their key, and redirect their funds before the block confirms. Now, here's why this scenario is not the crisis it sounds like. Step 1 requires a machine with approximately 500,000 error-corrected physical qubits, a machine that, as of today, does not exist, has never existed, and represents one of the hardest engineering challenges in human history. Step 2 requires executing a full cryptographic attack in under 10 minutes, which is the theoretical lower bound for a theoretical machine running theoretical circuits that Google specifically said were too dangerous to publish. Step 3, and this is the part nobody mentions, requires getting your fraudulent replacement transaction crafted, broadcast across the entire peer-to-peer network, and accepted into a block by miners, all while the legitimate original transaction is also propagating. You're not just racing a clock, you're racing the entire Bitcoin network simultaneously. And even if, by some miracle, you pulled it off against one address, you could only attack it once per spend event. The moment this becomes a known demonstrated capability, the community responds immediately. Nodes could enforce longer confirmation windows. Miners could implement policies. Wallets could change their behavior. The network adapts. That's what decentralized open source protocols do. Speaking of which, let me show you what is currently happening on Twitter because I think you need to see the full information environment that your friends and family are swimming in right now, and I want to provide some editorial context. Now let's get to these real posts from Chapter 11 or whoever, real takes from the people who have Twitter accounts and feelings about quantum computing. Let's go through it. Post number 1, and it got tens of thousands of views. TLDR, existing cryptography is dead. Mempool attacks are real. We must migrate to post-quantum now. This is the final warning. We will not have any additional warning signs or canaries in the coal mine. This is it. This is it. The cryptography is dead. The canaries are dead. Everything is dead. We are in the end times. Well, that last part may be up for some debate. But sir, are you okay? Is there someone I can call? You're describing a scenario that requires a hardware that doesn't exist, running circuits that haven't been built on an engineering foundation that has not been solved. And you're writing it like it's some breaking news alert in a World War II movie. Could it be breaking news during World War III? Oh well, I understand the impulse. New paper drops. Numbers that were big are now smaller. Brain says bad. That is, biologically speaking, a completely normal response. That is also not how quantum engineering works. Reducing the theoretical minimum qubit count from millions to thousands does not mean we are proportionally closer to having those qubits. The math getting better does not mean the hardware got easier. The hard part was never the math. The hard part is error correction. The hard part is coherence time. The hard part is building a stable physical system that can maintain quantum states long enough to complete a computation. And none of that got easier because a paper got published. Post number 2. We thought quantum attacks could take months. Now, a quantum computer could crack private keys in 9 minutes. Bitcoin's average block time is 10 minutes. Mempool attacks are real. We already addressed the mempool attack mechanics, but I want to zoom out and appreciate what is happening rhetorically here. This person is treating two theoretical time frames. One that was always theoretical and one that is also theoretical, as if they represent real, present capability. We thought it could take months on a machine that doesn't exist. Now it could take 9 minutes on a machine that also doesn't exist. The machine does not exist in either sentence. The threat timeline changed in theory, and theory is important. We should track this. But theory is not Tuesday. You know what else could theoretically happen? I theoretically could step outside right now and win an Olympic gold medal in the 100-meter dash. The theoretical time it would take me has nothing to do with my actual physical capability, which I assure you is not Olympic. My hamstring would do what JFK wanted to do to the CIA. Shatter it into 1,000 pieces. Get the wheelchair ready. Okay, now post number 3. This one, I'll give credit where it's due, at least correctly identifies the source. Google has sounded the quantum alarm, not a startup, not a doomsayer, not a fudster. Google. Fair. It is Google. That is significant, credible institution, real research, I agree. But here is the cognitive error. Credible institution, published research does not equal it's happening right now. NASA publishes research on asteroid trajectories all the time. That doesn't mean you need to build a bunker before breakfast. Google's own paper, if you read it, which apparently very few people did, explicitly describes this as responsible awareness raising. Their stated goal: urge the industry to transition to post-quantum cryptography on a measured timeline. They partnered with Coinbase, Stanford, and the Ethereum Foundation around a 2029 migration timeline. 2029, 3 years from now, for a transition process, not a crisis, a planned transition. Interesting group of characters, though, if you ask me. And finally, my absolute favorite. This one requires no setup. All your models are destroyed. All your models are destroyed. What models exactly? The Bitcoin network processed hundreds of thousands of transactions just like yesterday. The hash rate hit another all-time high. Blocks are arriving every 10 minutes. The mempool is functioning perfectly. Your hardware wallet is right where you left it. Oh, nothing has been destroyed. The models are fine. Everything is fine. And look, genuine empathy. Some of these people are not grifters. Some of them are genuinely afraid. And fear is a completely rational response to a confusing story told maximally poorly by people who have a financial interest in maximizing your anxiety. Clicks, views, engagement. Fear drives all three. Now let me ask you something. Who did Google partner with to announce this quantum alarm? Who did they choose out of every institution on planet Earth to be responsible, sober, trustworthy voices urging the crypto industry to act? Coinbase and the Ethereum Foundation. Let that marinate. The two organizations whose entire business model depends on Bitcoin either being compromised, complicated, or replaced by something they control, those are your quantum safety partners. That's like hiring the arsonist to run the fire safety seminar. That's like asking the guy who's been trying to pick your lock for 4 years to review your home security system. Google didn't just publish a paper. They assembled a board of Bitcoin's most motivated critics and handed them a megaphone and labeled it responsible disclosure. And here's what makes it genuinely, cosmically funny. Neither of them can help you. Coinbase is a centralized company that holds your Bitcoin for you, meaning if quantum computing ever became a real threat, they are the single point of failure, not you. They are the one address with the permanently exposed public key. And the Ethereum Foundation, bless their little hearts, has been promising to fix their own cryptographic vulnerabilities for so long that post-quantum Ethereum will arrive approximately the same time as Ethereum 3.0 or something, which is to say, after several rebrands, a lot of blog posts, and never quite on schedule. These are the people warning you about Bitcoin's security. The irony is so thick you could stake it or impale it, if you're into that. But here's the thing. The single most measured, most accurate, and most useful public response to this entire situation came from someone who does not panic, someone who reads the actual papers, who runs one of the largest corporate Bitcoin treasuries in human history, in all of history, who thinks in decades, not in panic cycles. Michael Saylor. Watch this. But first, look at our likes.
3-4 times, maybe. I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Before we bring it home, I need to tell you about the tools that can actually help you navigate everything we're talking about. Secure your future today with our friends over at the Bitcoin Way. Ready to truly master Bitcoin, storing it safely, sending it freely, and saving it for the future, including smart inheritance planning? Most people get stuck in myths, shaky setups, and zero confidence when it matters most. The Bitcoin Way changes that. Their expert team teaches you everything: secure storage, smooth transactions, long-term wealth protection, and passing it on seamlessly. Head to thebitcoinway.com and secure your future the Bitcoin way. You can schedule a free 30-minute consultation today using that link in the show notes.
But we have to remember two things. One, the two words on the back of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy: don't panic. Most important two words, more important than everything in the encyclopedia or the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The second observation, the Hippocratic Oath: do no harm. And so, whenever you're faced with a challenge in any system or any network, you have to make sure you don't panic. You're not railroaded into doing something foolish or destructive. And you also can't do something that causes harm. You don't want an iatrogenic intervention where the cure is worse than the disease. So, our position on quantum computing: one, we think it's probably 10 or more years away before there's a threat. That is the consensus. It's a promising technology, but it's still nascent. Uh, Many industries, including finance and defense, are dependent upon traditional cryptography. They face the same risks. There's a significant global investment going into building quantum resistant protocols, not just in the Bitcoin community, across all communities. The Bitcoin community in specific is engaged on research and development in these efforts. There's good work that's taking place. If Bitcoin requires an upgrade, there will be global consensus. Right now, there isn't global consensus that existing cryptographic libraries are at risk. And to stampede into a hypothetical fix before there is consensus would introduce new attack surfaces and new complexity and new failure modes that don't currently exist. It's very similar to over vaccinating. And it's like, well, there's a 0.001% chance that the kid might get a disease. So we're going to vaccinate them just in case. But of course, 3% of the people that get the vaccine have side effects, right? And so it's very important that we don't over insure, over vaccinate, over treat, over worry. It's a famous president of the United States. He said, if you see 10 problems driving down the road, 9 of them will probably drive themselves into a ditch before they get to you. So the one thing you can't do is you can't buy 100 expensive insurance policies that cost collectively 100% of all your operating income to insure against something which is 2% likely to happen. That's why you have to be very thoughtful about addressing these risks, and you have to address them at the right time, not too soon, not too late, but because too soon, you probably don't have the right technology and you're over insuring. Too late, right? You accept the risk that you shouldn't. That's why consensus is very important.
Latrogenic intervention. That's the phrase. The cure being worse than the disease. And Saylor is right. The answer to quantum computing is not to panic fork Bitcoin into something unrecognizable, rushed, and poorly consensus tested. The answer is exactly what the Bitcoin developer community is already doing: methodical, open source, incentive aligned engineering on Bitcoin's timeline. Let me show you specifically what has already been built, because this part somehow got almost zero coverage in the same media cycle that ran 67 breathless articles about the Google paper. Shrimps. That is not a typo. That stands for, and the Bitcoin developer who named this clearly has a sense of humor, stateful hash-based, ring-based improved multi-party schemes. This is a post-quantum signature scheme developed by Nick Lerner at Blockstream Research. And here's the timing I need you to sit with for a moment. Blockstream dropped Shrimps days before the Google announcement. The developers were not reacting to the FUD. They shipped and then the FUD came to them. Here's what makes Shrimps technically significant. It produces hash-based signatures at approximately 2.5 kilobytes in size, roughly 3 times smaller than the current NIST post-quantum cryptography standards, and it supports multi-device use for the same seed, which previous quantum schemes for Bitcoin couldn't do. Why does size matter? Because Bitcoin has block space constraints. Every byte costs transaction fees and occupies finite scarce block space. The reason previous post-quantum schemes have not been implemented on Bitcoin is not that the developers didn't care, it's that the signatures were simply too large. They would have bloated every transaction and degraded the network's capacity Catastrophically, Shrimps works because it exploits a unique behavioral property of Bitcoin keys. Unlike a bank server key that signs millions of transactions a day, a Bitcoin key typically signs 2, 3, maybe 5 times in total in its lifetime. That usage pattern makes a stateful, compact scheme viable without the overhead that would destroy the network. Item 2, BIP 360. Bitcoin Improvement Proposal 360, a quantum-resistant output type. A new kind of Bitcoin address format that uses post-quantum cryptography instead of today's elliptic curve cryptography. And BIP 360 is not a white paper. It is live on testnet. BTQ Technologies is running real transactions through it on Bitcoin's test network right now. Today, while Twitter was losing its mind about a paper with 96 logical qubits, Bitcoin developers are testing post-quantum transactions. Here's how Bitcoin upgrades actually work, because I think a lot of people don't understand this, and it matters. You don't just flip a switch. You propose, you build, you test on testnet, you run in parallel on mainnet. You gather community consensus through the BIP process. And then when the time is right, and when there is sufficient consensus, when the implementation has been stress tested, the network upgrades. No central authority, no executive decision, consensus. Could this full upgrade take 7 years from BIP 360's current testnet phase to full mainnet deployment? Yes. Should it take that long? Probably, because this is the most significant cryptographic transition in Bitcoin's history. And you do not rush it. Every rushed protocol upgrade in the history of crypto has introduced new vulnerabilities. Bitcoin moves deliberately. That is a feature, not a bug. The protocol will be ready before the computers are. Now here's the context that almost nobody in the mainstream is providing. This quantum threat, if and when it materializes at real scale, does not just threaten Bitcoin, it threatens everything. Your bank, SWIFT, the US Department of Defense, every TLS certificate securing every website you visit, every government communication system. The entire global financial internet runs on the same elliptic curve cryptography that Bitcoin uses. If a sufficiently powerful quantum computer magically appeared somehow tomorrow, which it won't, but hypothetically, the first targets would not be your hardware wallet. They would be the NSA's classified communications. JP Morgan's internal keys, the Federal Reserve's infrastructure, nuclear command and control systems.
There's always concern about Bitcoin, like you mentioned, the quantum concern. Like, what if quantum computing kills Bitcoin? But I posted something on X a few days ago that Bitcoin is not in danger. Bitcoin is the danger, because you shouldn't be worrying about Bitcoin and quantum computing when there are so many other problems that will be caused when quantum computing actually works. But first of all, quantum computing is not a threat so far, and probably won't be for another 5-10 years. Quantum computers can't even factor 21 right now without some heavy customization of the algorithm. But if we did have quantum computers, let's say tomorrow, that would destroy the traditional financial system. All the banking sector would be wiped out. Stocks, trading, everything would be broken. All the encryption used in those systems would be broken first. And it's difficult because those are not, they don't have such a straight upgrade path like with Bitcoin. So for Bitcoin, because it is decentralized and it's software, we know what paths we have to fix the quantum threat, to mitigate the quantum threat. We just have to write the code, and then every node on the network, individuals like myself and others, update our software, and Bitcoin is now quantum resistant.
The idea that some rogue nation or criminal syndicate is going to point their theoretical 500,000 qubit machine at your self-custody Bitcoin wallet before they aim it at the Pentagon is, and I want to be precise here, not a serious security analysis. And this is exactly what Saylor said. Financial services, defense, they all face the same risk. This is a civilization-level engineering challenge, and governments, standards, bodies, and institutions are pouring billions into post-quantum cryptography precisely because they understand this. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, finalized post-quantum cryptography standards in 2024. The United States government has already started the transition. They are not waiting for Q-Day, they are building now. And so is Bitcoin.
One thing I've heard is that quantum is going to break the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
No, that's not true. I think that's a very solvable issue, and actually Coinbase has been very front-footed on this. We put together a quantum advisory council, and we're in regular contact with the major blockchains about a path to upgrade to a post-quantum cryptography world. So we're going to stay engaged on that, and I think it's very solvable.
Michael Saylor, Blockstream Research, the devs, the United States National Institute of Standards and Technology. That is your nobody is working on it list. These are some of the sharpest minds on Earth, and they're building solutions right now on Bitcoin's timeline, not Twitter's timeline, not Chapter 11's, not the media's panic cycle, Bitcoin's timeline. So what do you actually do right now? Today, 5 concrete things. 1. Stop reusing Bitcoin addresses immediately. This is free. This takes 0 additional hardware. If you have received Bitcoin to an address, have never sent from it, your public key is not on chain. A quantum computer cannot attack what it can't see. 1 address, 1 use every time. Make this a permanent practice. 2. Understand what type of addresses you're using. If you have Bitcoin sitting in a very old P2PK format, addresses from 2009 to 2011 era mining, your public key is permanently on chain. That is the most genuinely at-risk category in the longer-term theoretical scenario. The Bitcoin community will address what happens to those coins through a governance process. Watch that conversation. Participate in it. 3. Get into self-custody now, not your keys, not your coins. This has always been true. It is even more true as the security landscape evolves. If your Bitcoin is on an exchange, you have an IOU. You do not have Bitcoin. An exchange is not going to protect your stack through a cryptographic transition better than you can if you hold your own keys on a hardware wallet. Learn self-custody. Do it today. 4. Watch BIP 360. When this moves from testnet into the broader mainnet discussion, that is when the real community conversation about implementation happens. When the upgrade comes, Bitcoin's cryptographic security will be stronger than it has ever been in its 16-year history. This is not a crisis event. It is a planned, methodical upgrade that the network is already preparing for. 5. Turn off the noise every time a quantum paper drops, and more will drop. Because this is an active research area, the FUD machine will crank back up. Your defense is not anxiety. Your defense is understanding. You now understand that 96 logical qubits versus 500,000 required physical qubits is not a solved problem. You understand that your Bitcoin address is not your public key. You understand that Bitcoin developers are already shipping post-quantum solutions. And with that, you are no longer a target for the panic merchants. And if you ever need some liquidity, for whatever reason, you don't have to sell your Bitcoin. So why would you sell your future? Ledn just dropped their lowest rates ever. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. Your Bitcoin is never lent out, never touched, 8 years, 10 billion in loans, 0 losses. Simply Bitcoin clients get an extra 25 basis points off their first loan. Get liquidity without giving up your stack. Go to ledn.io using that link in the description. Okay, here's the bigger picture, the one I want you to take away from this episode. Bitcoin was built to be upgraded. Satoshi himself flagged the quantum threat back in 2010, before most people on Earth had heard the word qubit. The protocol was designed with this horizon in mind. The developer community has been thinking about this for 16 years. We live in a world where the legacy financial system, fiat currency, central bank money printing, compounding sovereign debt, systems built on fractional reserve promises, is built on foundations that cannot be upgraded. You cannot submit a Bitcoin improvement proposal to the Fed. You can't soft fork the IMF. You can't run a testnet for the US dollar. When those systems hit their mathematical limits, and they will, Weimar beckons. There is no open source community of brilliant, globally distributed, incentivized developers ready to ship the fix. Bitcoin has that. Bitcoin has always had that. The fact that Bitcoin developers were already building shrimps in BIP 360 before Google published their alarm is not an afterthought. It is the defining proof of this protocol's resilience. The threat got faster. The builders were already ahead of it. The yield on Bitcoin is freedom, and freedom doesn't go down because Google published a paper. And hey, if you're serious about Bitcoin mining, you need to be in Miami July 21st through the 23rd for Mining Disrupt 2026. This is the biggest Bitcoin mining conference on the planet. The people building the future of this network are going to be in that room. Use code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off your ticket. Link is in the description. Don't sleep on this. Get your tickets today. What do you guys make of all this? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a pat. And don't forget to set those notifications for the best of Bitcoin news delivered to you daily. Hey, love you guys. Catch you next time. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.